The City of Atlanta currently administers 3 separate pension plans: the fire, police, and general employee body. The new mayor coming in will actually inherit an unfunded budget of about $1.3 billion. Tell me a little bit about what you think you can do to fund that deficit, and can you do it by the ordinance deadline of 2024?
Well, there are 4 plans. There are 3 different groups of employees. There's the police officers, the firefighters, and the general fund employees. But for the general fund employees, there are actually 2 plans. There's the defined benefits plan, but there's also a defined contributions plan. There is a significant deficit, and one of the ways that you can deal with that is through reamortization. There's a deadline because they've set an amortization schedule. That schedule was changed in the past, and it was just recently changed in a sense, an evergreen 30-year amortization schedule, which will save Atlanta about $21 million over the next fiscal year. So paying it off by the deadline that's been set may not be necessary because the deadline can be changed. But just like everything else in the city, the real question comes down to being able to afford to pay the debt, like providing basic services, for instance. We must have the money to do so. We must get rid of any misallocation of resources, any mismanagement, any waste, so that we can rededicate those resources to paying pension fund obligations as well as providing basic services in the city. As you know, we just ended furloughs for police officers and firemen. That was because of a lack of money. So to address that issue, we must have the funding. We must get rid of the waste, the mismanagement, the misallocation, redirect that funding. We must find new sources of revenue. Now, one potential is to go to the government, and the application has already been made, to apply for low-interest loans to help cover some of that over an extended period of time. If you were to do that, you could shorten the amortization schedule and pay the loans off to the government over a longer period, which would get rid of that immediate shortfall.
Okay. Expanding that amortization schedule longer to the 30-year period will help save money, or actually save the city money. But because of the changes that the City Council made in 2005, that deficit is going to grow. It's going to grow by probably a larger amount if the plans hadn't been changed. And part of the changes I'm referring to is changing the vesting period for the plans, and also the multipliers by year for the plans. What do you think about actually going back and reviewing that a second time, or do you think that's appropriate?
I think it's appropriate. The question is whether or not you can do it legally. People have vested rights in those plans that you can't change unilaterally. The city has already looked at that. The law department has reviewed it. And one of the issues that was raised is because when they changed the plan in 2001, they made the changes retroactively with respect to police officers. And then they came in 2005 and did it with respect to, well, it was prospective with firefighters. But they made it retroactive. So one of the issues was whether or not that was giving people extra compensation for services already rendered. Our law department concluded that no, that was not the case, and therefore there was nothing to be done. There was nothing illegal. It didn't violate the Constitution, so there's nothing to be done about that. There's a case pending in California that's looking at the same issue, and it may be decided that there was, in fact, compensation given after the fact that was in violation of the law, and to the extent that that's the case, then we would be looking at that in Georgia as well. But what really needs to happen in Atlanta is we need to take a comprehensive look at our pension plan structure. The changes that were made in 2001, 2002 were not well considered in the sense that it did not look at the pension arrangement comprehensively and decide what was in the best interest of the city. If people had understood at the time, the prediction in 2005 was that there would not be a change in what it would cost on an annual basis. That turned out not to be true. It went up significantly after the changes were made. So we must look at the pension plans on a comprehensive basis, decide what it is we're trying to achieve with those plans, and perhaps end up with a different kind of plan altogether, or a combination of perhaps a defined benefit plan as well as a defined contribution plan. But we can't get rid of those obligations retroactively. We must find the funding to pay for it to the extent that we can avoid it through the lawsuit that I just mentioned. And in the future, we must develop a new plan, a new way of approaching these issues that does not allow that deficit in funding to continue to grow in the way that it has in the past.
And how quickly do you think you would actually look at changing the plan going forward? I
would look at it immediately. It's not like we're starting from scratch. The studies have already been done. The recommendations have already been made. They've not been followed because of a lack of political will. And that's why I'm not a politician in this process, and I will not be as the mayor of this city. I will be willing to make the hard choices that need to be made in the best interest of this city and the people who live here. It's not the policy that's the problem. It's the politics. And we must get the politics out of government so that we can focus on sound public policy.
Okay. Oftentimes, when we talk about the pension plans, we forget about the compensation, the benefit plans that actually go along with that and increases the pension programs. What do you think is important for the total compensation package to include compensation, benefits, pension, and any other programs? Do you think it's necessary to review those and adjust those for the City of Atlanta employees?
Yes, I do. When the pension adjustments were made in 2001 and 2005, it was about people feeling that the employees were undercompensated. And so it was a way to make up for what was a shortfall in compensation. And it was felt that we were losing good people because other surrounding jurisdictions had better compensation packages than we did. Unfortunately, we did it on the pension end. We might have done it on the salary end with a great deal more effectiveness, but we didn't do a comprehensive analysis of what we were trying to do. We must get in place a competitive compensation package so that when we train people, they won't leave us for surrounding jurisdictions or other locations because they don't feel they're being treated fairly. So, but the package to keep them, the competitive package, includes front-end salary compensation, pension benefits, as well as insurance benefits. So it must be approached comprehensively in the most cost-efficient fashion possible, while treating employees fairly.
Right. Okay. So I know you mentioned earlier that the debt for the unfunded pension doesn't have to be funded quickly, but the things that you're talking about cost money. They actually cost funds. What are you willing to stop in city government in order to fund those things that you're talking about now?
I believe that there's sufficient misallocation, mismanagement of resources that results in enough waste to pay for a lot of what we don't have today. When we hear about chainsaws that cost $700 and we spend $13,000 repairing it, when we hear about lawnmowers that cost $2,900, we spend $28,000 repairing it. When we buy land for public purposes and pay 3 times the market value for it, when we look at fleet services and we see the markup on labor beyond what even the employees in the department bill the city for, I submit to you that there are opportunities, and there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can seize and pay for a good bit of what we say we can't provide today. I don't believe that we can save our way out of this situation completely. We're going to need some help from the economy. And the economy will turn around. We will get that help. And in the meantime, we must learn to do more with less, and we must definitely get rid of all the waste. We must also identify new revenue sources. For instance, if someone is caught stealing water from the city of Atlanta, there's no penalty for having done that. The code provides that if you're late paying your water bill, you should pay the greater of $5 or 5% of the bill. Well, the city has a policy of building a flat $5. Who knows how much money we're losing through that process? We discontinued our parking enforcement group because we're going to privatize it before we got the new group in place. The group that we had, the employees were paying for themselves, but we stopped even collecting the revenue that they were collecting at the time. So there are lots of opportunities in the system to economize, to save, but we still must go for additional revenue sources. An example of that is the federal government and the stimulus package, for instance, with the 50 new police officers we're going to get. There are other opportunities like that. We must also work with better relationships with the state so that we can get, hopefully, a larger participation by the state. It's in everybody's best interest that Atlanta succeeds. It is the economic engine of this region, this state, and it ought also to be the pride.
All right, great. Thank you.